Last weekend we had massive street riots in Berlin. There was, I mean, there were three separate occasions, but it all ultimately melted, and they are all somewhat related with left-wing extremism or anti-Faism, squatters. And so I'll just go with you through the events and give you some background. So the first event that happened was a soccer match between the soccer clubs Hertha BSC and Union Berlin, both are Berlin soccer clubs, and I think the fans are partly political, but let's keep that aside for a moment. They may have just joined in later riots. They were partly responsible for the wounded policemen in the mess, but ultimately that was the most unpolitical part of it all. The second was a protest march against the war in northern Syria. There's the territory of Rojava, which is currently invaded by Turkey. The Kurds are connected with the Antifa through the PKK. I must say that I would have to read up a hell load about this Kurdish-Turkish conflict to give an informed opinion about this. Just leave it aside. What you have to know is that there is this strong institutional and organizational connection between the PKK group and also the Antifa. And the third was about squatting. There is a protest march in the name of maintenance of residence projects, and that was having 1,000 participants. The previous march, this anti-Turkey march, had 3,500 participants, but the later one was apparently the most violent. The number of injured policemen vary from 16 to 19. In total, there were 40 policemen hurt on that Saturday. 8 criminal charges were brought against the offenders. As weapons, explosives were used, but also paint bombs, bottles, and stones. There was an episode in that later maintenance residence project, blah blah, March, the third one, the most violent one, that was stuck out and shocked everybody. There was a construction site nearby, and they attacked the guards that were standing there, the private security guards, and they had to run to the trailer, to the construction trailer for shelter, but they smashed the windows of the trailer. And they had then to flee to the unfinished building and to the Aula compound to rescue their necks, so to speak. The Riga Street, this is where this massive protest took place, or the most violent part of the protest, is very famous for its squatter scene, and this was what the protest was about. We have people who occupy buildings against the law. They do not own the property, or at least this is how it started. Many of them have now somewhat contracts, but this is an episode that I will explain in detail. We have people giving in to law breaking, and so they end up with proper contracts, but they have very low rents and so on. And this is because violence gets positive returns in Germany and is therefore further encouraged. Now they have left a letter on their website which explains the situation from their point of view, and the queer group Enough is Enough has translated it into English. So I have an easy time to just present it to you. Enough is Enough is a very aggressive group that shot to fame by calling out teenagers, mostly teenagers, for homophobic comments, and they really went to the schools and to the employers in the most vulnerable stages of these people's lives and tried to destroy their careers, and very successfully so. So these people who are cherished by the mainstream media have have translated this letter for us and for the world to see. And it reads, on Saturday evening, the demonstration for the preservation of Liebig 34, that is the parallel street, this entire territory, Rigaerstraße, Ligaerstraße. This is all one Antifa squatter territory. This is linked together, and they are also referring to each other and helping each other all the time. So the preservation of Liebig 34 and other threatened projects took place. Towards the end, there were clashes with the police and damages at the construction site of the CG Group. That is the building company that owns the property where the trailer was that I explained, where the security guards had to hide out. Here are some impressions and evaluations. The demonstration started simultaneously with only about 450 people at Lausitzer Platz and Köpernitzer Straße, Köpi. That's a street, where about the same amount of people had gathered. So in total there were 900 people. Another demonstration had arrived from Syndikat, that is a bar, in Kreuzberg, the borough of Kreuzberg before. The two marchers joined at the Salesian Gate, and when the demonstration went over the Oberbaum Brücke, a bridge, to the Friedrichshain Southern District, the crowd grew considerably. State officials report about 1,000 people. Our own numbers go up to 2,000. Apart from the fireworks, the demonstration remained quiet until then, and the cops also kept distance. Then the demo went into the North District and past the construction site of the CG Group, which was not protected by the cops. The spark ignited. The construction site barriers were torn down in order to get to the container of the security personnel, which had controlled this road section until today and had terrorized residents. So obviously in this situation, they have not terrorized anybody. This is just a weird claim they just throw out. In reality, these people had done nothing. There was no police, and they decided to go onto a property they do not own and hurt people, or try to hurt people that have done nothing that would ask for it. So according to the press, a security guard later said, the press, by the way, that is an article in the newspaper Tagesspiegel, which belongs to Holzbrink, a very left-wing, sympathetic publication. But for them, they pretend they are against the state and against the moderate left and la. So they, oh my goodness, there's some little infighting going on, but not much. It's like, CNN fighting Antifa, not really serious. So according to the press, in this case, Tagesspiegel, a security guard later said that he believed he had to run for his life. The container was demolished and a bengalo, that is a flare, probably landed in it. The already plastered new building was thrown at with paint. Then the attacks turned on the cops, who were inferior in number and insecure. They were attacked with construction site materials, stones, bottles, fireworks, and formidable benches. And there were also direct physical attacks. What did these policemen do to warrant this? There's absolutely nothing. They just say, look, there are policemen, let's just hurt people. And part of this is, these are thugs. They just enjoy violence. A secret that we all have to keep for whatever reason is that, we have a natural tendency for violence, and we usually control that because we are rational, nice people. But there is a part of us, particularly us men, that just simply likes to fight. It's just there, we usually just control it because we are reasonable, do not want to get hurt, do not want others to get hurt, and so on. A part of us does not want this, but some part of us does. So there is some issue, and they look for justifications like they have been terrorized before. But at this level, the squatters, they are low-life people who just indulge these primal drives, like being into violence. For this short period of time, moments arose in which some individuals and small groups took their freedom to create chaos. That's what they understand as freedom. The mood was accompanied by chants from the organized ranks in solidarity. All cops are targets. The demo went on, and shortly after the Riga 78 between Silvio Meyer Street, Straße, and Proskauer Street, several parked SUVs were smashed. For whatever reason, the Greens have riled up everybody against sport utility vehicles. It's silly, but apparently people get violent over big cars, or relatively big cars. It's really silly. And we used to be the country that was proud of our car manufacturers. Now we are completely destroying them, which is a part of that. It's just focusing on a small group that pays lip service to the larger streams in the left-wing cosmos, but ultimately this comes from people who are much better organized, Chilstein kind of people, who are very nice on the media and talk a good deal of how they want to protect the climate and the planet and so on, but who are connected, have contacts into these groups, and tell them what justifications they can use to make trouble. Now being stopped with the SUV cars, I have to start the sentence again. The demo went on, and shortly after the Riga 78, that's the house number 78 of the Riga Street Straße, between Silvio Meyer Straße and Proskauer Straße, several parked SUVs were smashed, questionably also small cars. The operational command finally reacted to the surprising events by blocking off the two crossroads, which led to a cattle situation in which a very large crowd was trapped. After 20 minutes, the cattle was lifted, and the demo could move to Dorfplatz Square, where the obligatory pyro show of the Liebig 34 was crowned with the unveiling of a giant poster. Wow! A poster, my goodness. A little later at Bersanin Square, the demo ended and many people headed towards Dorfplatz, that's the square. There was music out of the box. Here we talked about the events. Thus it cannot only be reported subjectively that the demo can be described as powerful and the attacks as an important offensive moment in the fight for the threatened projects. So there was also a lot of talk about the injured people on our side. One person was unconscious and was first cared for by the demo Senes, that's the medical stuff, until the cops came, until the cops let an ambulance through after a long delay. The exact events have not yet been cleared up, which hopefully will still happen. Either way, our solidarity goes to the injured and to those arrested, whose numbers, according to conservative estimates, was in the single figures. Their lot must be collectively shouldered. Here again, we have very small body count, let's say, on their side, and a big one on the side of the civilized world. 40 policemen have been injured for no reason at all, but their wounded are somewhat in the one-digit numbers, whatever that means. This is just encouraging them ever more. I'm really tired of this entire police violence talk, because at some point you will figure out that you do need a bit more robust police violence, let's say. Some people need to feel an instant repercussion for what they do. They do not learn by seeing or something. They have to feel. And if they succeed all along, and these successes they transpire into many in many different ways, and people who get worn out. You know, your bystander gets tired and gets worn with these conflicts. They tend to say at some point, "I'll just give them what they want." And it does work. It absolutely does work. If you do not allow your policemen or your security forces, whatever in whatever capacity they are, to operate a little bit more, let's say, freely or violently, they will be pushed around. It's just as it is. I'm sorry to say that. Of course, I want as little violence as possible, so you have to measure it correctly. I think that's what I want to say. You have to measure it correctly. I'm not calling for violence. I'm not calling for police violence. Apparently, there is also overreach, and my whole channel is against government overreach. So there's a level of what is applicable, so that our civilized world doesn't get pushed out by aggressive people who just simply get an almost sexual reaction out of violence. Okay, so that's it. But the event, at least between Liebigstraße, Liebig Street 34, and Rigaerstraße, Riga Street, Riga Street 94, was not over yet. Aware of the global climate catastrophe, a small car-sharing e-mobile was politically improved, and street lighting was reduced due to the residents' initiative. Okay, so here we have an example of Antifa humor. Antifa is by and large a spoiled brat movement. They usually come from an academic background. Their parents tend to be doctors, lawyers, somewhat academics, and they worked their way down, so to speak. I will go to this later in the video, I hope. But the milieu really is not your poor person that just tries really hard and is unsuccessful in life, and is being thrown back again and again and lives in poverty for minor mistakes or for no mistakes whatsoever, without guilt, so to say. And this is their clientele is very different. When they speak of the poor, they actually speak of people who had a very good start in life and then just used drugs and early motherhood and so on to squander whatever opportunities they had. And these people have this weird sense of humor that they find it funny that academics use language that is difficult to understand for outsiders. And so they see it as humor to say something that is easily explained, like we are destroying lamps, and just screw the words and phrases around so as to make it a bit more intransparent. And this is kind of meant to be cheeky, you know. But you understand anyway. If you are smart and they think they are smarter than you, but they are not, you will understand immediately that they reduce the street lighting means they have simply smashed the lamps. The old trash cans were pushed onto Riga Street and set on fire, while the cops were massively attacked on Dorfplatz Square. It took a few minutes, more stones and paint attacks until the cops could react by flooding the whole street. It was good that many people could not be repressed, and the evening could end without further events when the operational command decided to withdraw the exposed mercenaries. Then they are shaded as mercenaries, the police officers, yeah, they actually did retreat. So much for the cause of the assembly. The day later, public reactions have been cautious so far. And this is another thing. I learned about this on Wednesday, and only through a conservative blog. I had to look into this actively, had to seek out the information for a street battle in the capital of my country. I wouldn't have any difficulties reading some Trump tweets and the new shit with the Ukraine, Russia, blah blah conspiracy story. But something in front of my home, so to say, is very hard to get by. You know, things that actually matter politically in my environment are not represented in our media. And this is because the left hates America first. They have also an America first. They hate America first. They are obsessed with finding every hair in the soup when it comes to America, and they completely ignore what's going on our doorstep. The CDU reports exclusively about 40 injured police officers, which is not very credible, but on the Henkel scale of the demo, it would have been the worst and most violent demonstration since 2016. They are proud of this. As for the interference of the CDU, CDU is Angela Merkel's party. It used to be a conservative party. It is now a left-wing party, but for these people, socialism is only real socialism when the trucks are coming free to your house every morning when you wake up for breakfast. As for the interference of the CDU, it must be mentioned that the two showcase idiots, Kurt Wanzner and Burkhard Dregger, who is quoted in brackets with tearing down Riga 94 and letting 3 years wastelands life fellow, tried to capitalize on the date by organizing a provocative Kiez tour and information event in the Café Sibylle in Friedrichshain on the subject of the Riga Street on Saturday morning. So speaking is, of course, an offense and it's an aggression, and therefore the left-wing extremists think this is an attack. Somebody capitalizes on something they do not like. That's also something you hear again and again when a migrant becomes violent. Then conservatives, the evil conservatives, are capitalizing by speaking about what's going on. Some committed people smashed the windows there on Friday evening. So this cafe, just for being a cafe, had been attacked. There is a statement in one of these left-wing websites in the media that explains in more detail. They had thrown brickstones into it. They really have turned this thing up and down. I think they even stole something. They even stole a tray for the waiters or so. Apparently, the cafe is a regular meeting point for politicians of Angela Merkel's party, but they are politically neutral, and they emphasize this not to get attacked by people who are even further to the left and who do not even understand that Angela Merkel is driving their agenda anyway, just in the speed that is somewhat is leading to a catastrophe in a later stage in your life, but because Angela Merkel is not bringing the Coke every morning, she is of course a fascist from the standpoint of these people. Perhaps it is because the Interior Senate has the media under control. This attack on all, that's a quote from Tom Schreiber, whoever that is, did not land on the front pages on Saturday morning. Yeah, sure. They do have the media under control, but they just feel that violence from the left is not as a big story as some shit Trump has done, Maybe, just maybe, it is because the newspapers are actually biased towards you? Huh? Maybe. But their idea is, but maybe in the bourgeois press hustle and bustle, too often a mountain have been made out of a molehill on Riga Street, and many have lost their enthusiasm. So they see this as they get away with everything. And of course it is, because our media is focused on shaming conservatives all the time. They give a free pass to people who make actual trouble, and therefore these people feel emboldened to become ever more violent and ever more aggressive. That's natural, and that's why I say you need police officers to throw a fist at some time. It is worth mentioning that the decentralized Internationale, Kies again, that's a borough, was on its way parallel to the demonstration on Saturday. The fine place, again, fine, they use this, I don't know, they try to present themselves as, or they try to mock everybody else as being academic, and they see this as a kind of humor to just call shabby things posh. The fine place of the cops near Alexanderplatz was devitrified, covered with paint, and a burning barricade was erected in front of it. Now that fine place of the cops is a police station where people pay their fines, and there's also a writing on indie media explaining the details of the attack. Devitrified also signifies the milieu of these people. Again, this is this pseudo-academic speech, and it all, I think, harkens back to the Red Army faction terror group and of the writing of Ulrike Meinhof, the terrorist whose daughter is speaking out against these people because she sees what is going on. And devitrified is, of course, it comes from the Latin word vitro, which means glass. But it doesn't exist in English as far as I can tell. I'm not sure. You can tell me in the comment section, but I think this is something the Antifa has borrowed from German, and or borrowed. The style is borrowed from German. The German word would actually include the English word for class, which is the same word here in Germany. We say entklasen, die class, so to say. But the style Miss Meinhof used when she was a writer for Left Wing magazine and the chief editor was that she used words that are a bit remote from your average person's discourse, and but it's not so far away that you would have trouble to really understand it. Again, this is this pseudo-academic stuff to tell people we are actually smarter than you without actually being smarter than you. It is all the sneering. All in all, a very interesting militant day with clearly visible references to the different topics of a common struggle. The attack on the CG construction site was overdue and took a load off the minds of many residents. Again, this was a completely unprovoked attack. Even if the damage might be not that big, it is still the malicious joy and the joy to be able to send a collective greeting to all the people who make hell of the CG group and the united attack of the demo. Yeah, I think it's about the malicious joy. This is at the very core of socialism, that there are actually people who do want to kill. And for centuries, actually, human beings knew this. There's this discussion about the original sin that Catholics had. There is this Sigmund Freud idea that we have an S that has a wish for killing. We all have that. Every one of us, particularly we men, have that. We were the ones out there killing the big animals that are either a danger to our tribe or just for food, or just for fun. Hunting is fun. That was how we evolved. Okay, there's this killer instinct in all of us, and they just live it out. Okay, they have no more constraints because they don't have a religion or no proper religion. They have created a religion of their own that does not prohibit them from following their nature. So for many, many years, mankind knew that in the depths of our souls, there's this willingness to kill each other. We restrain it because for good reasons, right? So the recent increase in queer feminist actions is linked to the attacks on the CDU, this party of anti-abortionists and its retreat areas. Liebig 34 functions as a link between isolated struggles and gains relevance at the moment of the strongest threat. The relatively targeted attacks on the sport utility vehicles from the demonstration are to be understood on the one hand as a sabotaging the means of reproduction. Oh, sexy. Rather than rather what with consumption. They don't even know. They don't even care, you know. Just any justification. We want to kill, we want to destroy. This is what we want, okay? Just any give us any goddamn justification. Chillstein, come on. So the consumption or reproduction of the rich in the neighborhood, but on the other hand, as resistance against deadly technologies. Okay, and this is also a thing. Pamela Geller talks about this, and I think this is the only intellectual right now that you can hear say it straight. Leftists are savages, okay? They really hate technology. This entire, we are for the future and you're backwards and we are modern. This is ludicrous. These people hate technology. Ask them to count, mathematics. Ooh, technology, math, evil, evil, evil. So these people feel they have to create a resistance against deadly technologies. Only a few days ago, a series of color attacks on SUVs on the cover of a Berlin tabloid newspaper managed to make it to the front page, explaining that, among other things, an accident in which an SUV out of control killed 4 people contributed to an increasingly negative attitudes towards these cars. Of course, questions of resource distribution and environmental pollution also count. Still is justifications to destroy modernity, modern technology. There's absolutely nothing wrong with SUVs. They are not more dangerous than other cars. And also, in the civilized world, we weigh risks. Okay, actually, I'm prepared to take the risk of a potential deadly car accident, and I weigh it against my freedom, and I just make my choice. Okay. Little was said about the fact that here in Berlin, we are on the street at the same time as many struggles in other places. Nevertheless, our hearts are beating in unison with the people in Hong Kong who attacked the cops and the state news agency with firebombs. With the people on the territory of the state of Chile who rose up despite the massacres and torture with Exarchia or whatever, where another eviction of a squad was answered with Molotov cocktails, and with the Gilets Jaunes, whom we can congratulate on the 1-year-old anniversary, with the people who make Leipzig a danger area for state thugs, and of course with the determined ones who don't wait for the collective moments, but work on a daily basis to accomplish and achieve these moments. Okay, what I find interesting here is leftists have this dichotomy. They claim to be against the state, but also they want to transform it into an administration. One has to know that Karl Marx's writing was developed in the 19th century when a lot of cults emerged, and all cults have in common that you have to read, from book to progress into the vocabulary of that specific mindset, and it just destroys criticism or the possibility of an onlooker to talk you out of it, because eventually one word gets replaced by another word, and you will always claim that there is some inaccuracy in it when somebody tries to criticize you, and you're not focusing on the matter of the criticism. And this is done with this: we are against the state, but we are for the administration. We are against a hive of us being a part of a hive of human beings who are organizing ourselves, but we are also for a collective. And this is because the left is just replacing the words without understanding it, and they just progress from book to book, like Scientology, by the way. We are progressing from book to book, and they feel proud of their effort to learn these silly vocabulary changes. And they do not understand that this is futile work. This is futile work. It has absolutely no benefits. It just shelters their ideas from criticism. So they apparently are on the side of the people in Hong Kong, who they absolutely do not care about, and they have absolutely not read up anything about the Chinese oppression and how that is actually still a communist centralized government or economy. They do not understand any of this, but they have this idea that they are also fighting against the state. Now, I want to wedge into a note on the horseshoe theory. Because these people do not have the state, the administration that they desire, they have to seclude themselves. They have to detach all connections to the outside world, and therefore they do develop some libertarian views, and that's quite natural. And also, a part of that horseshoe theory comes from the fact that the mainstream is lying about certain things. So when I read these hardcore leftist material things, I very often find myself in it. And that is because the left is lying on a lot of things, or the mainstream left is lying on so many things, that eventually you will find a notice or a word or something that rings a bell with you, and you think, hey, why doesn't Steve Bannon say this? Or the truth. The truth has a sound to itself. So you find jihadists, you find communists, you find Scientologists saying things that make perfect sense, but are hardly ever discussed in public because the mainstream is wrong about these things. So this was the letter. I found it on the website of the squatters in the Riga Street 94. The protest was about evictment statements or the preservation of the projects or living projects or residence projects of the Riga Street 97. They're close by Liebigstraße 30 or Liebig Street 34, probably named after somebody with the name Liebig, and the bar Syndicate. Now, Syndicate is a collective that did not even know who their landlords are. They somehow moved in illegally. Again, they were so violent that at some point somebody got some contracts for them. It's just this in socialism, just wait for the truck caterer to ring the doorbell approach. So they did not even bother to look up who their landlord was until he told them to leave, okay? And then they went on a research spree and found that he did not even show his real name on the bills. Or let's say he had founded a subsidiary only for the purpose of collecting money from them. So the violence and the aggression coming from the left is so big that the organization, the company, the PS Global Real Estate, they did not even dare to have their proper names on the bills. So they founded little companies, and apparently this was not the only case. They had about 6,000 objects in Berlin with a myriad of subsidiaries being responsible for them. And this is because a lot of areas in Berlin have a hard left radical structure, and they are attacking their landlords. Then there was this protest against the ejectment of this Liebigstraße 34. They are a queer lesbian collective, and I have printed out their English letter self-description, which I will go through with you in a moment. I think well, what surprises me is that the queer scene or queer milieu is so violent. There is this entire they are ginned up with that story of that gay bar in New York. What is it called? Something with Stonewall Inn. They had this Stonewall Inn fantasy or whatever, because it's only half historical. There is a lot of legend spinning around it, but this police rioting in New York gave birth to an attitude of some people in the gay rights movement that is just as radical as the Black Panthers. I must say I'm a pro-gay rights person. You can do whatever the hell you want in the privacy of your bedroom, as long as you hate women. but these people are going too far, and it shows already that the first letter that I read out to you was translated by a gay rights group, a very radical gay rights group. This is not, let's say, that's not the nature of your average gay person, and we all know it. Activists do not reflect the normalcy of your average person, that is the group being represented by these activists. Keep that always in mind, and I think this shows very well. Yes, I like prejudices, and I do not think that gay people as such are terribly violent thugs. Okay, this is just, they are just some people, and they are ginned up for purpose. And of course, they should have never been as outlawed as they were. A part of this is, of course, also the responsibility or the consequence of bad behavior by us religious people. Okay, so let's go to how they describe themselves. So the Liebig 34 is an anarcha-queer feminist self-organized house project without cis men, directly at Dorfplatz Square in Friedrichshain. The house hosts the separate collectives Infoladen, that means info shop. Daneben, Infoladen, oh my goodness, they somewhat translated it. Okay, Infoladen is like a shop where you sell brochures and newspapers and stuff. And the name of it is Daneben. The event space L34 bar and the Anarcha Queer feminist living project, and with living project they mean residence project. Okay, so the beginning, the history of Liebig House 34 as a house project began in 1990 when many houses in East Berlin were squatted, which is true. I do not know exactly why, but there apparently was a call from the oppositional church in the communist regime. Once both states merged, they did not quite understand the conflicts and the alliances and stuff, and so they fought against what looked like state oppression for outsiders. Okay, that's again like when I read left-wing radical texts, I think, oh, that sounds very libertarian, strange. So there was a misunderstanding apparently, and they asked for the homeless and so on to just take the space of these houses in the Mainzer Straße. There were a lot of houses in the Mainzer Straße that were empty at that time, and they took that space, and when the police cleared it, they moved into various objects, and their numbers just grew exponentially, and this became a big thing. So the stone roll began rolling in the 1990s with the reunification of both sides, and actually good people in the church, in the Lutheran church. Oh yes, there were good people in the Lutheran church, and anti-communist people were actually asking people to use that space. Don't let the government tell you, we just threw out our government, don't let the government be in your way. That was the misunderstanding at the time, and this resulted in this spread of housing projects. Oh, squatting. Shortly after the Liebig 34 got squatted, the project was partially legalized. Again, authorities gave in. And just as many other houses at this time. Around 1999, the people in the house decided that the project should continue in only women and lesbian space. Over the years, it changed to a FLT, a women, lesbian, trans project. By the way, if you don't understand what cis men or LFLT or transgender, blah blah blah, or what these words mean, how dare you? And after some more years, we decided to change our house definition to without cis men, but all other A- gender identities welcome. Okay, And then, after the failed attempt to buy the house collectively, a lease agreement for the entire house for 10 years was negotiated in 2008. Until then, the info shop Daneben and the bar XB Liebig were still squatted. The owner, since 2008, Liebig 34 is owned by Giora Pardovic, who is believed to own at least 2,000 houses in Berlin, and who is known for the deliberate buyouts and destruction of house projects, like the ones in Scharnweberstraße 29 and Rigaerstraße 12. Good man. Pardovic, his company Siganadia Grundbesitz GmbH and the house administration factor GmbH are infamous for their violent and bullying methods of coercing people to leave their home, so he can renovate it and make a huge profit. Oh, there's the evil profit again. And what these people are also fighting, and why they find any damage good, is the rising rents and gentrification. Again, I must come back to the milieu where they come from. They are all people who had good chances in life, very good chances in life, sons and daughters of professors, of administrators, high-ranking people who worked their way downwards by using drugs and that kind of stuff. Most of them, I put aside the people who were homosexual and who were actually thrown out of their homes for that reason and stuff. There's crazy shit going on. I'm not denying this, but the majority of these Red Army faction, Antifa thugs, they are people coming from very good homes, had all chances in life, and do not care about poor people who are in this position for without fault. They hate people. In fact, they absolutely hate people who want to move up. And this is a part of the explanation why they hate Donald Trump. Donald Trump still speaks working class English. His father grew up in poverty. He is culturally new money. He is tacky. He thinks, more gold looks like more upper class. It does not. We all know it does not. Well, at least most of us do know that. But he shows through his tackiness and through his, let's say, resistance against overtly formal language or good language, that he remembers his roots. And I think this is really what drives these people crazy, because they are these middle class people and upper middle class people who know their roots, but want to be something else. They have this pirate dreams of unwashed shirts, whatever, and they hated that there are people who work hard to improve their lives, to improve their communities. They want to bring everybody down with them to their savagery level, hate technology and stuff, and they hate everybody who wants to move up their living standard and who wants to improve their life and the life of their communities. This is the basic conflict of our time, I believe. So let's continue. But Liebig 34 is and stays our house. Very strange for people who hate property. That's very interesting. Also, there is a lot around the squatting movement that suddenly they remember that stuff is theirs. It's baffling how often they suddenly insist on ownership they do not have. It's crazy. So in the house live around 40 people from all over the world with different backgrounds and A-gender identities. Also a lot of dogs, cats and some rats. And I'm sure they all live in unison and peace and harmony and with no ranks, the dog and the cat and the rat. They just share a jolly friendship with one another. In the house, we communicate in several languages. Our main language is the imperialist English. Spaces where we can try out collective living, alter gender and identity, where we can develop, extend and exert anti-patriarchal structures. Spaces where we reflect power structures and privileges, and where we can empower each other, are urgently needed. We consider ourselves a a consent democratic project, and that works perfect with this dog and the cat. And try to have no hierarchies where also people with less political experiences can participate. It is important for us to offer living spaces for people, I mean residents, for people who either because of their finances, their legal situation, and or several forms of discrimination have few or no opportunities to find another residence. For us, as a self-organized project, self-organization doesn't only have a political but also a practical meaning. That's why we do all our tasks like repairs, building, etc. ourselves and live based on the ideas of do it yourself. Remember, this is a house filled with lesbians. We see ourselves as a political project. Our joint political fight is anarcha feminism, but there are lots of other fights being fought by members of the collective, like queer feminism, sex work activism, animal liberation, anti-repression, trans activism, anti-gentrification, no border activism, no colonialism. That ship has sailed. We have no desire to experience everyday sexism and cis male dominance, especially not in our home. That's why we live without cis men in Liebig 34. All other A genders, A- genders are welcome here. In the future, at the 31st of December 2018, our leasing contract is over. We don't know what's going to happen after that. What we know is what we want to keep the house, our house, because we need it and love it. So that there is also a court case pending, which will be, I think, in either 1 or 2 weeks, where the status of it will be renegotiated, and the demonstration is partly about that too. Okay, there are many other examples. I just skipped them because the video is already long enough. But there's one interesting one because it foreshadows the migration crisis. There is something that is going on since 2012, and apparently there is an entire protest movement. And again, being violent pays off in Germany, and this is the reason why people get encouraged and emboldened to do this. And one interesting one is the Gerhard Hauptmann Schule, or Gerhard Hauptmann School. It was occupied first in 2012, as one of these many projects from the asylum industry. First, a private investor wanted to buy the school, the campus. In 2012, it was still a public, a state school. Sorry, in American English, it's public school. In Great Britain, it's state school. You know what I mean? A government-funded school, and they stopped the business in 2012. And in the same year, in December, this quarters moved in. Now, the explanation, I have to make this sweeping point here because I forgot it earlier. The reasoning for these quarters is always, these buildings are empty anyway. This is a waste if we leave all these spaces empty while they are homeless and so on. But you do need some time between one tenant and the next, and also to plan what you can do with an object to create some wealth. This is not just about some short-sighted use of resources, fast. This school had an investor that wanted a private school and wanted to turn the campus into a private school. The envoy, the city council envoy for education, Bildungsstadträtin Monika Herrmann, has stated she is against it because she does not like a competition for the existing state schools. So this is a clear communist anti-competition woman, and she had ultimately destroyed this project. You will find that we'll go with you through that step by step, but in the end, what could have been a private school is now going to be a permanent refugee center, a homeless shelter eyesore. It's going to be an eyesore. So the occupation started in December 2012, and in March 2014 an agreement was reached between the refugees, or those squatters who happened to be refugees, and the city-state Senate. Berlin is a city-state, and the parliament thereof is called the Senate. And it says that the school and the nearby protest camp on the Oranienplatz Square, it started there originally, this protest, and then they just squatted that school, and they remained there, but apparently some were left behind on the Oranienplatz till 2014. And the agreement was that those residents and those remaining on the Oranienplatz Square should leave under the condition that the state would grant them a review of their asylum cases one by one. So first they hit the ground, they camp on a square, they take over a school, and then they put out demands. And given that this is not an exception, this is really there are many places. This is not just Berlin, by the way. There are many places in the supposedly orderly country of Germany where you think this is basically occupied by a foreign force. You feel like some military should be sent into this. I was quite shocked when I heard that the Philippines had some ISIS strongholds, but now looking into this, I realize this can happen in the middle of any country. The Philippines are largely Catholic, but they have a Muslim minority. You can have strongholds of foreign powers right in your country, and the police will shy away from sorting it out, and there's no wish to send the military into it. We have a provision in the constitution that's absolutely pointless, that prohibits the military to clear the space. And this is also often, or always, it's always justified with a lesson from history. You must know that the Wehrmacht never did anything internally in Germany. We had the party, the NSDAP party, militia, SA and SS, that did all the military violence on the streets of Germany in the day. It was never the Wehrmacht, but for whatever reason, we have learned from that specific period of time that the regular army should not do what the regular army did not do at that time. So we get not sorted that out with military force either. Anyway, they just moved in, and they were finally granted that their applications were treated one by one. However, this agreement was only signed by 160 of the then 200 refugees. Later there would be more. Then the 40 who remained were asked again to leave, and a new set of negotiations led to another agreement a couple of years later. I think that was 2018 or no, 15. Yes, I think it was 2015. There was this evictment again in the air, and the 40 remaining residents agreed that they should not block the emergency exits, and they should prevent newcomers. Again, the number grew, so they didn't even bother with that. We are not talking paying rent. We are not talking anything. Those who owned the school, apparently it's the city-state itself, did absolutely nothing to do something economically sensible with that property, and they could only ask these quarters to not block the fire emergency exit, so that they would not be blamed for some death if so that the authorities would not be blamed for some death cases if somebody fooled around. And I think this was even a school where some guy was slaughtered in the bathroom. He was stabbed in the bathroom, but I'm not quite sure. I think it was. Anyway, not part of this video. By the end of September, the district administration called again for an evictment, and the reasons were that they had destroyed the doors, and they had 3 security guards whom these residents attacked. Okay, so these residents attacked the security guards and destroyed the property, and so the city asked them to leave. At this time, they had already told everybody that this will be turned into a permanent refuge residence for new arrivals. Okay, but they said, given their behavior, this cannot take place. If they destroy the doors and so on, you cannot get more refugees into it safely. In May 2015, a court decision allowed refugees to stay. Again, we have crazy people in our government and all branches of it, and we are ceding. Civilization is ceding for no reason whatsoever. People who had taken property they do not own are allowed to stay, and I have a very hard time with many court decisions in Germany to decide what law they are actually basing this on, or what precedents they are basing this on. Again, we see an ultimate retreat from the authorities, from civilization in this case, and this was held up until 2018, January 2018, when a final evictment was going forward. And of the 540 refugees at that time, so the number expanded tremendously, only 3 people were actually granted asylum. Only 3 people were real refugees. All the others were just thugs who occupied something they did not own. Currently, the building is holding a supposed emergency residence, for whatever that means, I suppose also for refugees, that has 109 tenants. They are planning to add an additional building to accommodate ever more people. This is for homeless women, refugees, and just as an oddball, students. So you have a student residence, and it's also a homeless shelter, and it's also a beaten women shelter or something for homeless women, and this must be women, and I'm not sure if you can be a trans woman or gosh. But anyways, they are adding an additional building to that compound. And again, this was a state school that had the opportunity to be turned into a good private school that could have made something great out of this place, and instead they have turned it into an eyesore, a complete eyesore. Some heartwarming stuff is probably given as an explanation, but the reality is we have violent people wearing down, tiring everybody around them until they cede their positions, and ultimately those who are most aggressive get benefits from their aggression, and this will spurn on ever more of the same. That was it for today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.